The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Forge Fitness and Nutrition LLC, the podcast hosts, owners, employees, contractors, partners, or affiliates. This presentation may include the use of explicit language. Listener or viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to the Forge Fitness, Nutrition, and Habit podcast. I am your host, Michael S. Parker, and I am super excited today because I am joined by John Bauer. He is a health and wellness professional with over 25 years of experience across, I would say, nearly every facet of the fitness industry. His career spans roles as a personal trainer, a club manager, a college instructor, which is where I met John. He has also served as director of education, curriculum strategist. He's a trusted mentor to fitness professionals and leaders. And throughout his journey, John has guided clients on the training floor, built and managed high-performing teams. He's designed innovative learning systems that elevate the standards of professional fitness education. He is now the leader of education content development at Lionel University, where he develops and optimizes programs that equip health and wellness professionals worldwide. He's going to have a lot of really good stuff for us today, whether you're a fitness professional or you're somebody who just loves fitness, nutrition, and habit content. It's all for you. This isn't just for people who are in the fitness industry. It's absolutely for the everyday person who really wants to get some specific insight. John, tell us a little bit more about yourself off the back of that you'd like to share.
Sure. Well, shoot, thank you for that intro. I haven't heard someone else introduce me like that in a while. And so it actually filled me up with a little bit of pride because I have bounced around quite a bit in the industry. I did start way back in a time called the 1900s, and it was a whole different time back then in terms of the industry, in terms of who I was. I was a much younger person at the time, and it's been a really fun journey through the industry and the many different titles that I've had and the different responsibilities that I've held. But yeah, it was really interesting to kind of hear you talk through all that because I think it brings up a lot of things that we're going to talk about today in terms of how to get through different parts of your career, how to optimize opportunities, and really how to thrive in a career where sometimes it's not a clear path on how to thrive, right? Sometimes you need to meet the right person that mentors you in the right way, or you have to have the right manager that points you in the right direction. But yeah, so again, thank you for that. So again, my name is John Bauer. I started in the industry back in the 90s. I got certified and I was ready to roll. I was coming off being a college athlete. So to me, it just felt like a comfortable place to go to work at a gym where people were working out. And at the time, it was really important for me to, be active and have a place where I can play basketball every day. And when I first took the job, I think I did it thinking I'm going to do this until I figure out what I want to do with my life. And then I started making like what felt like adult paychecks. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's something here. And I did happen to have success early on. I had a lady who was a national success story my first year, and her poster was up in every single 24-hour fitness in the country, which, brought me a little bit of notoriety locally. And I learned a lot about marketing because when we put that poster up and it had my name on there as her trainer, it was a big deal as far as me building my business. So it was a great introduction into the industry. And since then, I don't know how many personal training sessions I've done, but it's thousands. But then I started to branch off and get into other things like club management. So I've managed every sort of club, large and small, right? So big resort style health clubs to little boutique style health clubs and gyms, more personal training studios. You and I got connected because of Bryan College. We were both on the advisory board at Bryan College before we ever worked there. Mm-hmm. And, I think I've told you this before, but one thing, you can find a little bit of mentorship in anyone, even if they're not like formally your mentor. You can kind of take tips from people. And one thing that I learned from Michael is that he shows up as a professional every time. He showed up to this advisory board meeting in a suit. And when he was answering questions, I was questioning my own answers to the questions because I was like, this guy's giving way better answers to questions than I am. So it kind of taught me about the level of professionalism and preparedness that can really, kind of elevate you. And so that's something I took away from you. But then there was my time at Bryan College. I've had the opportunity to be a teacher to a lot of students. I got the opportunity to be director of education for a health club chain at one point. So directly influencing the onboarding and success of a lot of personal trainers, for this health club. And then for the last 5+ years, I've been on the side of education content development. So developing certifications, continuing education for, quite honestly, trainers globally. And what a cool thing I think for me to be able to do, because when I started way back when as a trainer, remember I said, maybe I'll do this as my profession, maybe not. I didn't know. By no means did I think I was going to write textbooks or speak at the big conferences or anything like that. I didn't really see that in my future. So I feel really lucky that my career evolved in this way. And there's probably a lot of great tidbits of information that I know we'll talk about today that kind of helped me to get there. It wasn't always easy. It wasn't always straightforward, but when I look back, there's definitely things I can pinpoint that helped me to find these different opportunities in my career.
I remember too that I think the first advisory committee that we were in together was somewhere around 2007 or 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So a long time ago. We've known each other a long time, which has been great. It's always been great to run into you at conventions or, out and about within our industry, professional situations. It's always been a lot of fun. And I really appreciated that, what you would call, I think, that osmosis mentorship. I definitely gleaned that from you and some other fantastic people throughout my career. I've always said that, being a lifelong student is really important in this field because things change a lot. Not just the way that the industry moves. I'm talking about what we understand about exercise science, what we understand about nutrition and its reasonable application to the people who are just wanting to be well, whether it be an athletic sports goal, it could be something that's aesthetic, or it could just be to have higher levels of mobility and a functional life. Doesn't matter. People like you at your level are moving the industry into a higher level of capacity in the way that we present reasonable solutions that are based on scientific evidence as we have it today. I wanted to ask you a question to kind of maybe start. 25 years is a long time. Actually, you're over 25 years in the industry. I will hit 25 years next year. But you've been doing a lot of different things. You and I have a very similar path. But I always like to ask veterans in the industry, if you could sum it up, what is the biggest lesson working in this industry taught you about life? And moreover, how does that relate? At one time it related to clients, but now it's relating to the next generation of educators. So what's a lesson that just really resonates with you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Most of my adult life, I've been in the fitness industry. So I've learned a lot of lessons over the years. And one that really sticks out is, and most people in fitness, our clients, people can relate to this, is oftentimes there's some sort of result they want. They have goals, right? And oftentimes people are looking for the fastest way to get there, maybe the fastest and easiest way to get there, which fast and easy as far as goals like that, I don't know if it really exists, but people are always looking for that. Ultimately, it's usually keeping things simple and keeping things consistent that helps people to reach their fitness goals. But then if you look at everything else, if you're trying to save up for a big purchase, if you're trying to get better at some sort of skill, if you're one of those people that's like, okay, I don't know about AI, but now I want to learn how to do AI, you're not going to learn it all today. So small, simple, and consistent action is what usually adds up to the big results. And that's really across the board with most anything, not just weight loss or muscle gain or whatever the case may be, but that's for sure the case with those things. But with most anything that you're trying to accomplish with your life, especially the big goals that you have, it's really going to take consistency. And how do you keep things consistent? By choosing things that you will do consistently. And oftentimes that means keeping it relatively simple. So simplicity plus consistency is what most oftentimes adds up to success. So when you approach things with that mindset, then it allows you to, I guess, not be so let down if not everything happened for you in one day.
I think the value of accumulation is extremely important when it comes to fitness, nutrition, and habit change. And if you're so focused in on that extrinsic end result, it can be so frustrating. And I'm going to get to that. Actually, I'm going to pin a question in my head here, but I have another one since we're talking about legacy in your career. Let's go back a little ways, back when you were a trainer. What did the fitness world look like in your eyes back then? And what would surprise people the most about how much it's changed?
Well, if you were to walk into the first gym that I worked at and look at the people who are there and where they're located in the gym, you would see a big difference between then and now. Back then, you didn't see a lot of young people or women near the weights. It just wasn't the case. There was still this notion that lifting weights as a young person, bad for you. Lifting weights as a woman is going to make you bulky. right? So there was a lot of fear associated with something that's quite honestly one of the healthiest things you could be doing for yourself, right? Fast forward to now, and you see groups of young people working out together, and the mix of men and women on the weight floor and the cardio floor is much more even now than it used to be. So that's a major shift in getting more people outside of just dudes who want to just lift like bros out on the weight floor. It's a major shift to get all of those other people involved. And I think it's because, you know, as much as there's still a lot to learn for us as an industry and for a lot of the general public to learn in terms of fitness, I think a lot of good information has made its way to people and has influenced how people are approaching using the gym. You know, if you were in a gym when I started, you didn't see a lot of women outside of maybe some of the bodybuilders on the weight floor. And now the gym floors and the weight area is crowded with, again, both young people and women. So that's a major change. A lot of the machines still look the same, right? A lot of the machines look the same. A lot of the cardio, they come up with some new stuff every now and then, but they're more or less the same. But who's using them and how they're using them is a major shift. And then if we start to get into the weeds a little bit, like you and I can probably see this, but people aren't just doing bodybuilding anymore. There's a lot more, you know, I can use the word functional fitness as just a kind of a catch-all, but a lot of people are training in ways that are not necessarily just about aesthetics. You know, I like to call it keeping your body useful. You know, I'm almost 50 now. So that's something that's more top of mind for me now than it was 25 years ago. Is I just like to make sure that my body remains useful, because 10 years from now, I'll be almost 60, 20 years from now, I'll almost be 70. And I still want to be able to get out there and do some of the things that I enjoy, and having a strong, healthy, sturdy, functional body is one of the ways that's going to allow me to continue to do those things. So there's definitely changes in how all of that feels. And then lastly, I watch trainers a lot. I can't help it when I'm in gyms.
Oh yeah.
And there's, you know, I guess there's a lot of different types of trainers now, because sometimes people will, you know, take on a persona. I'm the kettlebell person, or I'm functional, or I'm a strength and conditioning coach. But I feel like I see a lot more variety in the way that trainers approach their training with their clients, which ultimately I think is a good thing, because not everyone wants to train like a bodybuilder or an athlete exactly. So if we know that we got different needs and wants out of clients, it's great that there's a lot more avenues that trainers can take to present themselves as a coach of overall health and wellness.
I would have said the exact same thing. I wrote about it in my book, even, that one of the best things that I've seen happen in the fitness industry in the last 20 years is the massive migration of women from outside of the gym into the gym, and then out of the cardio section, off the treadmills and the Stairmasters, into the strength training environments. And I think that is a fantastic development. I'm really happy about that. To all your points, that's right on, man. But from your perspective, speaking of all these people coming into the gym, and there's still a really, really high attrition rate, not only for gyms, but for personal trainers. So what do you think, what's the difference between someone who sticks with fitness for life versus someone who either quits forever or has a pattern of starting and stopping and starting and stopping?
And you're talking about the professionals, or are you talking about
I'm talking about people. Like, yeah, there's just folks coming in to try and get fit. Like, there's just a massive attrition rate.
Well, so it's a very common saying that people will say, and professionals will say, that it's a lifestyle thing. You got to change your lifestyle. And then what do a lot of people do? They don't really do a lifestyle change. They get on a program. And a lot of programs can give you a result. But when you look at the program, is this something that you can continue to do forever? Mm-hmm. You know, a great example, I don't know if you watch it, this on Netflix, this Biggest Loser thing just came out in the last week or two. There's kind of a documentary about the Biggest Loser. And that was such a great example. People were eating like 800 calories a day and burning like 7,000 or 8,000 a day. I mean, yeah, you're definitely going to lose weight, but is that a sustainable way of life? The answer is obviously no. So, you know, part of the reason why I think people have a tough time sticking with things is because they're doing the opposite of what I said earlier. Earlier, I said simplicity plus consistency is going to get you there. And then they're choosing complexity. They're choosing things that are maybe challenging them in ways that is not sustainable. And I don't just mean physically. I mean, can they fit it all on their calendar? But does it actually vibe with their lifestyle? Are they forcing themselves to eat in ways that they don't actually like? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're doing a bunch of stuff that you don't really like, chances are you're not going to do it for a long, long time. So I think oftentimes what makes it difficult for people to stick with something is that they get on a quote unquote program that for them may not be entirely sustainable. So then the question becomes, what can I get this person to do? And as a coach, that should be one of the first questions you're asking yourself and asking your client is, what can I get you to do? Right? If you've got someone who's not used to spending more than 30 minutes a day just on their feet, then I don't think some giant, crazy fitness program that they got out of Men's Health or whatever is the first best choice for them. But oftentimes that's what they come in asking for, right? I don't know if you've ever had this where someone brings in okay, this is how The Rock is working out. So I'm trying to be like The Rock. And, starting off with The Rock's workouts is probably not the best place for most people. So again, to sum it up, I think people are doing things and choosing to do things that maybe they didn't vibe with in the first place, but they think it's what they're supposed to be doing.
That's a really good point. I think that is one of the main reasons that I started getting into more certifications related to coaching and behavior, because I realized that I could write the best fitness program in the world identical to what that person's needs are, meaning that it's not some cookie cutter Men's Health or bodybuilding.com, certainly not ChatGPT or AI, because that's almost always wrong when I ask it to develop a program because I'm curious to see. And it's just like the cute variables are all off. It's very frustrating because people are hurting and they're looking for some way to heal. But the problem is that we live in a world now where they don't really want to do the work because they've been told that they don't have to, and it's ingrained. It's always the path of least resistance. It's always what's fast, what's the trick, what's the gimmick, what's the new thing, that it puts people in this cycle of fitness failure. And that can be extraordinarily discouraging. And I think that that's why people tend to quit, because they don't get the results that they expected. Now, there's a caveat to that, which is the results that they're typically expecting were not reasonable to begin with. But how are they supposed to know? That's why I'm excited to have this conversation with you, because we're going to talk a little bit about how the fitness industry is changing and actually showing people a little bit about where to get their information, because it's definitely not social media influencers. I'll tell you that right now. But it is true that over the years, it has gotten worse, that when we take on a new client, we spend many sessions removing bias. It's probably the one thing that we have to contend with in the first couple of sessions. My coaching team is constantly telling me like, this person that just signed up, they're not listening to anything that I'm saying. And they've only been a client for like 2 hours. They just sent me the printout from ChatGPT about what they're supposed to be doing. And then they just want me to make sure it's good and write it and coach them through it. But it's wrong. Or they're like, hey, I want to do this diet. And it's like, I don't know, something stupid, like, eating raw cabbage and then just drinking apple cider vinegar and then standing on your head for 5 minutes. That kind of nonsense that comes up. And I'm using extreme examples, but by the way, that cabbage and apple cider vinegar is a real diet that's out there. We've seen all kinds of stuff, because I'm on that front line right now. We're working directly with people that have had enough is enough. That's why I even started Forge. It was designed specifically to help people clear the clutter and create programming that's specific to their unique needs. What do you need? Not what everyone else is doing. You have to look at all of their life. You can't just look at their goal. You have to look at how you're going to get there. You can look at the top of Mount Everest and say, I want to climb that. But when you get into the peaks and the valleys and the rivers and the glaciers, it's way harder than you ever imagined. And if you're ill-equipped for it, or your goal is outrageous, it's not sustainable, and it's probably not going to give you any fulfillment and joy. And then you're just going to get discouraged and quit again. I think that you made a really good point. You had mentioned mentorship earlier, because you spent years mentoring fitness professionals. Why do you think that mentorship, not just information, is so critical for growth in both fitness and life?
Mentorship can act as kind of the ultimate heads up. Like, heads up, you should do this. Don't worry so much about that, right? I've been guilty of just being an information and certification gatherer. Now, part of it is just because I like it. So I'm not really bothered by it. But when you're really trying to discern what's the best thing for me to do as a professional, doesn't it make sense that learning from someone who's been there and done that would be helpful? It makes logical sense to me, right? And the first person that offered me like real mentorship like that was someone was Rex Owens. And I bring this up to him every now and then, but I remember it was around that 2007, 2008 range, probably when we met, where I was kind of saying, how do I do more? How do I become one of these people? I was kind of complaining. And he said something like, John, nobody knows who you are. Like, why would anyone ask you to do anything if they don't know who you are? You have no network. You could be the smartest trainer in the world and no one knows. So then a light bulb went off for me. I was like, you know what? He's right. I need to get out there and do more things. And he was always really great about that. And that's partially what got me to participate in things like that advisory board, is I just needed to be out there a little bit more. And that one little piece of advice, game changer for me as far as the rest of my career to this day, is just knowing that, in a business that is so much about people, I was actually guilty of not expanding my own network of people within the industry. So I learned a lesson there, and it's been so good for me to not only expand my network because of opportunities, but you get to know a lot of really great people, right? And the more great people you find inspiration in it. You do possibly find opportunity. And more importantly, you can find mentorship. And mentorship, again, it can come in a lot of different ways. Some people are a mentor to you for decades. Sometimes someone comes into your life for a few weeks, but they drop a couple of nuggets for you that you're able to take away and put to good use. So in a world where there's so much information and it's hard to figure out what's the right information for me, finding someone to bounce some ideas off of or to learn from, and again, someone who's been there and done that, can help you to shave so much time off of trying to figure things out. Because you could do it by trial and error if you want to. And I've done plenty of things by trial and error, but wouldn't it be nice if someone was like, you know what, John, don't waste your time with this thing. It would be better if you go in this direction. Mm-hmm. Now they save me time, energy, money, the feeling of doing something and feeling like I wasted my time, which is one of my pet peeves. I don't like wasting my time. So mentorship is critical in all those ways, including just accelerating things, getting proper feedback. And if you have a really good mentor in your corner, they'll let you know when you're moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I agree. First, about Rex Owens, he's going to be a guest. So
nice.
He'll be,
awesome.
He's, I meet with him next week. So I'm very excited about that, because Rex and I go way back too. Not as far as you guys do, but he was one of the people that I go to. Him and Dr. B were the people that I typically go to with my personal programming that I was working on. Because at the time I was very lean. I was running sustainably 8 to 9% body fat all the time. I would never do that again. But I was working to try and meet my max genetic potential, and their mentorship overrode my information. I found that the way that they saw the information was different and how it was applied. Their expertise, I would say that their experience trumped the textbook. That was eye-opening for me to remember that what may be just fine exercise for one person is not fine for another. It's important for fitness professionals to seek out mentorship from the right people, and that you do that by building a network. I also wanted to mention that's true on the end user too, for just clients. They have to understand that getting a personal trainer isn't about information. It's about coaching. It's about mentorship, how to mentor yourself through this, because you had already touched on it earlier, that if the people just really struggle with all that information and being consistent with the application of the minimum thing that they need to see results, they get wonky. You can't really program your life that way. It just doesn't work. Now, we both know that that's the same. It's same for fitness professionals. It's same for clients. And I'll just say clients in general, for anybody who's engaged with the wellness professional. But this comes back to something else that I think is a big problem. We know that many people feel very overwhelmed by all the fitness and nutrition advice that they find online. And that could be in any avenue, any medium. What is your advice for the average person to tell the difference between solid information, solid advice, or just scrubbing out the nonsense? So for someone who's listening that's not in the industry, but just wants to be healthier, how do they filter all of the misinformation that's rampant in our industry?
Yeah, that's, again, another great question. The issue when I was first coming up was information wasn't necessarily readily available anywhere, and I didn't know where to look for it. So I would just go to like the bookstore and go to the fitness section and pick out some stuff. Now there's an abundance of information, but now the issue becomes, how do I know what's the good information and what's not? So a few kind of my checkpoints as I see things, like let's just say we see it on social media or in an article or whatever the case may be. You often will hear things telling you what to do, but hardly ever does it tell you why this is going to work for you, right? And unless I hear some sort of why, I'm already skeptical. You're telling me to do this thing, but you're not telling me why it works or why it would work for me. Now I don't have really any basis for why I would want to do this thing other than, I mean, let's face it, social media and marketing, it's pretty compelling, right? I mean, I talk myself into doing things and I kind of know better sometimes, but I'll see something cool and then I'll think, maybe I'll try that. So marketing, there's a reason why there's people with whole degrees in marketing. It works. And when it's done well, it can really be convincing and influential.
Absolutely.
So we have to be able to ask questions. So again, you see something, you got to ask yourself, why does this work? And why would this work for me? Another good place nowadays where I think mentors can come into play is, I don't want to just blanket statement and say everyone who's online is fake or an influencer is fake, because there are some great,
of course,
very knowledgeable people online who offer great information. So one thing I could do if I was acting as a mentor to someone is I could say, hey, I love to follow this person, this person, this person, and I can tell them why. I could say, this is why I like this person and this person and this person. They're strong followers. They have great information. They'll give you background. Some people who are the researchers, they'll post their research. So they'll validate whatever post they're making. So in that sense, really, you're kind of checking the source. Now, whether or not you're checking it yourself or asking someone else for advice on what source to take a look at, I think you want to know the source above and beyond whether or not they're telling us that they're a fitness professional or a health and wellness professional, or the nutrition world is a crazy world because there's a lot of people giving nutrition advice online and they're just repeating stuff that they kind of heard somewhere. And it's just oftentimes not great advice, and you're certainly not hearing any whys. So again, ask why this would work. Check your sources, or ask for help in understanding the different sources. And then generally speaking, anything that is presented in absolutes, meaning this is always the way or this is never the way, I already have questions, right? When they say never eat apples or whatever, like you'll hear crazy stuff like that. Oh my gosh, you ate a banana. There goes your results. Like it's, you see stuff like this online, and again, I would ask, why is that true? There's never a why behind that, really, at least not a good one. And then oftentimes the sources of information like that are not too good. So when you hear extremes or absolutes like that, I think you have every reason to be skeptical. And then lastly, is what you're seeing relevant to you anyway? Because I think that's a big one, right? I follow a lot of people. I know some people who train professional athletes, really cool videos. None of that training applies to me anymore. I think it's cool to look at and it's cool to learn, but none of what he's doing with his professional basketball players applies to me. As much as I would love it to, it doesn't apply to me. So I think there has to be some sort of like relevance. So I think what I'm really asking people to do is to put on your critical thinking hat for just a couple of seconds whenever you see information, and just ask yourself a couple of basic questions.
I think educators have a responsibility to teach how to ask why. Let's talk about Lionel University and the bigger picture for you. So now you lead the education at Lionel University, and for a lot of people may not know what makes Lionel different, and is the general public should care about, is because it's exclusively focused on fitness professional development. And one of the things that you're passionate about is preparing that next generation of trainers. But what qualities do you think tomorrow's coaches are going to need to have to really impact lives? Maybe something that's maybe overlooked now, maybe it's not as emphasized, but it's going to be really important.
Yeah, it's already happening, I would say. So gone are the days that you can just be a weightlifting coach or a rep counter. When I started, like a lot of people, that was the expectation of a trainer. They kind of expected us to be a little bit of a drill sergeant and tell them what to do and help them with weights and spot them and count the reps. That was kind of the expectation of what the general public had for trainers oftentimes, until they got a good one, right? And then their perception would change. But those days are gone. So what does that mean now? Back in the old days, we used to say it's a good idea to have some nutrition background, probably a good idea to learn a little bit about coaching, probably a good idea to learn a little bit about sales and business and that sort of thing. None of that's probably a good idea anymore. Those are have to have. You have to have those things now if you really truly want to be one of those people that stays in the industry. Your question earlier, you asked, why is it that so many people are entering fitness and dropping out? And on the professional side, the same is true. A lot of people are entering the profession of fitness and dropping out. And why is that? One of the reasons, I think, is they're not approaching it truly like the best professionals of today are approaching it. The best professionals of today understand that we're more than an exercise coach. I mean, a lot of people are moving away from just calling it a fitness coach or personal trainer. It's health and wellness coach, because now people are coaching better habits for a better night's sleep, how to mitigate stress through meditation and breath work, or they're teaching you how to do power cleans. That same person can be doing all of those things now. Whereas before that was like 3 different people, right? Now the same person can be doing a lot of those things. And guess what? They can also run the technology necessary and teach you how to use the technology necessary in order to track your habits, in order to access their online programming. So again, I'm not saying any of these things are nice to have. I think you have to be proficient, not just with exercise, but you have to have some basic knowledge in nutrition. You have to be able to be technologically savvy. You have to have some business savvy. If you don't have those things, then you're just ignoring some of the parts that are going to help you to be a successful professional. So again, in terms of, what should people be focusing on? I think, and this is a great conversation to have, is defining what it is to be one of us now, a personal trainer or whatever we want to call it. Cause it's a very different thing than it was way back when. And, I think a lot of younger trainers may see it that way. I know that there's a lot of older trainers that are reluctant to take on technology and that sort of thing, but these things, they're here. So whether you acknowledge them or not, they're here. And then the last bit on this is the perception of what a trainer is by the general public and what the expectation is. Because of things like social media, a lot of people expect more than just a rep counter and someone who's going to spot you. They're expecting, Michael, I'm sure you feel this. Sometimes people expect us to know everything about everything now, right? Yeah. And that's a lot. That's a lot. But I do think if we're going to talk about, the trackers they're wearing, someone needs to be able to help them interpret the information. And a lot of trainers can't. Why not? Because wouldn't that be a great piece of, a great skill for you to be able to add to what you do for your clients? So again, in terms of where trainers need to be, I think it's a far cry from where it used to be. And I think as things continue to grow and wellness starts to become a bigger factor in the health and fitness space, I think it's only going to grow in terms of what people expect of us. But here's the good part, because that might sound scary. If people are expecting more of us and we're able to deliver on all of those things, what do you think that does for us professionally? Are we able to charge more for a really well-rounded service? Absolutely, right? If you're just a rep counter now, that's, I don't know, you call that a minimum wage job? I would call that a minimum wage job. But if you're all of those other things, now we're really, truly a professional.
I think that that's absolutely right. Within Forge, the way that we operate is we talk about being fitness, nutrition, and habit coaches. Our retention rate at Forge is remarkably high. I'll tell a secret. It's because it's hard. So anybody who wants to do what Forge does, good luck, because it is really difficult to do. Our average client stays for 2 years. My client base is pre-Forge. So I have clients from 2007 that still work with me. Now, Forge will turn 9 years old on January 1st, if you can believe it. This year alone, I'm celebrating 6-7 year anniversaries with clients who've been with me from nearly the beginning. One client, he's hitting his 9th year in January, which is remarkable. And here's why. I'll tell the secret is that you treat them like people and you get to know them and you build rapport. Back in the day, I used to say it's called personal training for a reason. If you have a relationship, an appropriate relationship with your clients, and there is an exchange of value, then they trust you. And that trust almost inevitably turns into some kind of a friendship, which is extraordinarily healthy. It's healthy for me. It's healthy for my clients. I have a really great relationship, and I can't imagine ever doing anything else in my life ever again other than this. I mean, obviously Forge has other things that we do, like this podcast. We publish books. In fact, we have another book coming out here pretty soon. I'll have to tell you about that one separately because I don't want to spoil it. We're still working on all the back end stuff, and that's a whole nother thing. I don't know if you knew this, but we also have a publishing company at Forge. Forge Fitness and Nutrition LLC has 3 subsidiaries, and it's all designed to add value and help people. And that requires you to focus on their fitness at where they're at, their current condition and their goal. It requires you to have a fundamental understanding of nutrition. I have a little bit more of an advanced understanding of nutrition, but you don't have to have a degree in nutrition to help people navigate the surface and the quagmire that is modern nutrition. I guess you could say fad. And then habits. In fact, I have clients who change what their goals are based on how much more fit they're getting. For example, a client who started, it was like a couch to 5K kind of thing years and years ago. And she's run a marathon now. Never in a million years thought she'd run a marathon. Then she comes to me and says, now I want to maximize my deadlift and my back squat and my bench press, and I don't want to do endurance training anymore. I want to take my fitness into a different direction because I can. Because she changed her lifestyle. And that's so important for fitness professionals and anybody listening to this podcast. whether you're watching or listening, remember that you actually have to change your life around this. It's not a temporary fix. And then you said something else. I really want to talk about the technology because it is changing everything. Forge obviously is a technology-based business. Everything that we do is online. We don't see clients in studio, even though it's nice here, but I don't think people are going to want to travel out to rural Texas. The thing that I was going to say is, and well, when we have coaches in Italy and all over the United States, but here's the interesting thing. The technology requirements of a fitness professional now are staggering. You have to understand basic marketing. You have to understand how social media works. You have to understand basically the sales funnel process of online sales, because that's where you're going to get your sales now. It's not going to be brick and mortar. It's just not likely. And then there's wearable technologies, and then you have DEXA scans and in-bodies. And if you can't read that as a fitness professional, you lose faith with your clients. You have to know those things. I've had clients come to me thinking that I am going to read an X-ray or an MRI for them. And I said, little out of my scope of practice there. But the fact that they felt like they could bring it to me, that right there, to me, that's a win. That's a success. So speaking of technology, from your seat, how do you see tools like online learning or AI shaping the future of personal health and fitness from the professional side? Because we already know what that's going to do. It's just going to create more chaos on the client or the wellness practitioner side. We know it's going to be more that we're going to have to deal with, but it's going to definitely impact the profession as well. So what would you say to, say, for example, a classroom of students on the topic?
So, I mean, there's a few different ways we can go with this. So we'll go, a few different ways. So content creation is one thing that I do, right? And technology and AI and all that stuff, it accelerates the process quite a bit. So that's great for me professionally, but also for a lot of people who put out a lot of, nonsense content. It accelerates the speed at which they can put out more nonsense, I guess. So again, it's helpful and hurtful at the same time. So again, back to what we talked about earlier, know your sources, know where you're getting your information from. But in terms of putting together compelling content where a real learning experience can happen, it's really helpful in that sense. In terms of the experiences we can create for our clients, online training has come a long ways in just the last 5 years. You would know this better than me, I'm sure, because you're in it. What we can offer, the way we can offer it, the type of feedback we can offer, the timeliness in which we can offer it, the level of assessment and feedback that we can provide through online things and technology has come so far. There's really actually pretty good movement assessment technology that you can have a remote client use with their own phone for you to then judge how well they're moving in, say, a squat. That's something that truly exists now that wasn't really around 10 years ago, at least not in a commercial sense for most of us. In terms of how we teach, and when I say teach, I mean like teach students, like students of courses like the ones that I put together, but also teach our clients. It really positions us in a way where we can have more contact time with our clients virtually and give them more, I guess, quote unquote, homework. And homework sounds like a bad word, but there are instances where when you gamify homework, it's just another touch point for them to get a reminder that maybe there's a habit that they should be doing or a reminder on how they should be doing it. But it really allows us to kind of expand our coaching in ways that wasn't available to us back in the day. Back in the day, if I saw my clients 2 times a week, maybe those are the only times I talked to them all week, So there's just less contact. And the gamification part of it, I'm moving this more toward the education side, but, there are, although this bothers me a little bit, and this is the old guy in me coming out, a lot of people pay attention to their phones, and taking a course or learning on your phone versus your laptop computer actually isn't different. But again, I think it's the old guy in me thinking that's crazy that someone would take a course on a phone, but it is the case. So then if we know that, if people are accessing information that way, then it's logical for us to approach maybe even education in that way. And when I say gamify, if you're answering multiple choice questions and you're getting points, and those points can add up to some sort of prize or badge or something like that, it kind of simulates what a lot of people are doing with just playing games that don't really add up to anything on their phones. Now it can add up to additional education or study time, etc. So, I could go on and on about this, but the point is that technology is everywhere. Technology is a major reason why you and I are able to do the jobs that we do. And, we can choose to accept it and then become good at it, which is what I would suggest, or not. But again, to me, that means you're ignoring a very important part of life these days. And in some cases, ignoring tools that could be extremely useful for your business. I do want to clarify one thing though, because it sounded like I demonized programs. There is a time and place for anything, right? And if I had a bodybuilding show that I'm competing in 3 months, I'm probably getting on some sort of program. But the point is that I know I'm on a program with an end goal, knowing that it's not my new lifestyle choice. So depending on the goal of the person, a program might be what they need. Sometimes people need to get on a program to run a marathon, right? But if they just want to become a healthier person that occasionally runs and is including fitness in their life and including vegetables in their diet and that sort of thing, these are lifestyle changes. So there is a time and place for programs with specific goals and then lifestyle change. Now, with that said, oftentimes when people are approaching either, they'll do what I like to call majoring in the minors. And here's what I mean. There's the major things we need to do, and those would be the basics. Get a reasonable amount of activity on a daily basis, and that's your training or your non-exercise activity, right? You probably need to be getting a good night's sleep. You should be eating reasonably well, right? I mean, I know that's a very basic way to put it, but I don't think you need to coach someone to understand that drinking water and eating some vegetables is better than eating candy and soda all day, right? So those are the majors. Those are the basics. Those are the things you should be majoring in. But a lot of people may like to try to major in the minors, meaning they heard that they should take a scoop of apple cider vinegar every day, or there's this new cleanse, there's a detox, there's all this stuff. And none of that stuff really matters unless you've got the basics down first, right? The basics have to be there before we start doing all this fancy stuff. That's just the way the world works, not just fitness. That's just the way the world works. You got to be good at the basics. Master the basics. When you talk to a lot of people who have great things going on about their health and fitness, oftentimes they're pretty masterful about the basics, right? They're pretty nerdy about getting a good night's sleep. They're pretty nerdy about not drinking too much. They'll eat their vegetables. They're active pretty often. The basics. A lot of people like to major in the minors, partially because it's marketed to us and marketing is compelling, and we get taught, oh man, this influencer does this, this, and this. And, unfortunately, because it is compelling, it makes a lot of people think that those are the things they need to do. Whereas they really oftentimes need to do the not so sexy and not so marketable things like go to bed earlier, eat some vegetables, go for a walk. If more people would do those things, the crazy obesity problem that we have, a lot of the chronic health conditions associated with being inactive and underslept would probably be far less in the country. So in terms of, one mistake that people often make, if we're going to phrase it that way, it's oftentimes their focus is on the wrong things. They're not focusing on the basics. If you're not good at the basics, you have no business trying to do all this other stuff. So there's guidelines that we learn about exercise and what's the right amount and how much lifting and how much cardio, there's guidelines. But then we have to sprinkle in what I know about my client. If they work 50 hours a week and got 3 kids that are taking the soccer practice all the time and their weekends are busy going to soccer games, then there's quote unquote programs out there that there's no time for. So we might be setting ourselves up and setting our clients up for failure by giving them something that no one could hold them accountable to because it's not possible. So in order to personalize it, we then have to find out what is possible given them, their preferences, and what their life will actually allow, right? Because if we do that, now we've actually picked things that are more likely to actually happen. And the funny thing is, oftentimes with a lot of these programs, or even, if we're calling it lifestyle change, whatever, we set up for failure by creating something that's highly unlikely to happen in the first place, and certainly highly unlikely to happen consistently for a long time. So if that's the case, then we have to go back to personalizing things and actually talking with our client and learning about what their life entails, where they can fit things in. Sometimes a little education can go a long way because unfortunately a lot of people think that workouts are supposed to be 90 minutes long and blah, blah, blah. And that's not true either. So whatever we can get them to do, especially if it's more than what they were doing before, that's a win, and, whether it takes a year for them to get to their goal or 3 months, progress is what matters the most. And to kind of something you were talking about earlier, when people start running, all of a sudden they're running a marathon. It's not actually all of a sudden, right? There are steps in between that get them there. And then there's this feeling of momentum, right? We've all felt it where you're like, okay, I'm feeling better. That last run felt easier. My body's not killing me anymore. I'm losing a little weight. I'm feeling good about myself. It's that momentum that can keep you going. And when you do keep things simple and consistent, there's the potential for this momentum. And when done right and done right with the right client, you got that momentum going. That you as the trainer, all you got to do is just be there to keep it going, right? And that's the best when a client is feeling it, when they like a switch is flipped and they can kind of see the light and it's working. That's about as fun as it gets being a trainer, when you're working with someone that is really kind of seeing it and really feeling it and has that positive momentum going forward. So yeah, I think looking at it that way, I think is helpful for us as trainers, because I think we get taught guidelines and then we think I have to, we do that square peg in a round hole thing with our clients, right? And the guidelines are there to do just that, just help guide us. But the ultimate guide for the type of programming we're going to do with our clients is going to be them. So whether they're fitting in a whole bunch of short workouts, whether it's teaching them how to plan their eating effectively, whether it's teaching them one or two little habits that can help toward a good night's sleep, all of those little things can lead up to big results over time.
The way that I kind of go into the coaching space with my clients before I actually give them solutions that are based on their unique situation is that I say that consistency in your case is going to be intensity every single time. If we can get you consistent to the degree that it's reasonable, and all the other markers, the basics of the game, you're not overeating, you're eating well, you're getting enough rest. If you're consistent in your, it's not a regression at all. In fact, it could end up being a progression. And so there's this all or nothing mentality that I really coach clients away from, which is they feel like if they can't be in the gym for 90 minutes, then they're not going to see results. So why even bother trying?
Right.
I find that to be a very frustrating mindset personally. But now that's just the framework, because the next thing that has to happen is the solutions. As a coach, you have to have the agility to look at your client and say, what are we going to do to ensure this? I've had clients have massive injuries. I had a client completely detach her Achilles tendon, and she kept going because she's like, well, I have an upper body, don't I? Because she was coached into the mentality, and she never quit. She's fantastic. And she's been with me for 5 years. The other thing that is important to note when it comes to that all or nothing, or that I just don't have time, or I'm so tired, is that there's probably reasons for that you may be able to control. There's a prioritization problem. If we're going to be realistic, that's really what it does come down to. If it was important enough, you could find a way. The adage is the American College of Sports Medicine says you just need 150 minutes a week of physical activity. And I believe they said your heart rate has to be over 135 beats per minute or something like that. I don't know. It's a little nuanced, but the point that they were making was that 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week is generally enough to maintain a reasonable level of fitness for the average person without pre-existing condition or some problem, Now, I don't know if that's necessarily true for everybody. That is a broadsword generalization. I could give probably hundreds of stories of clients who maybe at first didn't have this skill, but we coached them into the skill, which is, how do I find solutions to these problems? And is there a way that I need to reprioritize to maintain the sustainability that's unique to me? And remembering that if you lose a week or two, that is absolutely nothing in the long game.
Right.
You can have a couple bad weeks. The point is that you never give up and you get back on immediately or as soon as you possibly can. Consistency is critical when it comes to at least the fitness aspect, the exercise. Nutrition is fun. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole. Maybe another podcast we can talk a little bit more about nutrition, because that's always an interesting space to get into. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about in your profession and in your viewpoint of the industry. Where is health and wellness heading in the next 10 years for the everyday person? Because we know what it's going to look like for the fitness professional. We've talked about that. But what can people expect to see in the next 10 years?
Probably excited and wary of all of the technology integration.
Wearables.
Right? Yeah, wearables, but everything, right? Because from here on out, when a health club is buying cardio machinery or cardio, filling out their cardio sections, there's going to be a lot more technology involved in your average elliptical, whether it connects to your wearables. whether it connects to your sources of entertainment and games and all this stuff. So some people will find that exciting. Some people will find that really annoying. But at the end of the day, a lot of that is inevitable. And so there's just technology integrating everywhere. Since there's so much information available, I think more and more people will be able to find education on the many different ways to approach fitness, the many different ways to approach nutrition. I mean, a lot of that already exists, but I think there's going to be many more platforms where people can reach that information. And again, not just social media and not just formal education like us, but I think there's going to be a lot more potential information, which puts us in that position again where we have to know if we're picking the right sources of information. I think, and some of the conferences and some of the things I pay attention to, I feel like show this to me, but wellness was a trend for a while that seems like it's now here, right? It's staying. There's an emphasis on wellness. Now, whether or not we're doing it right, I still have questions in my mind. There's a lot of stuff under the wellness umbrella that, ironically, I think people are stressing out because they're not doing enough wellness stuff, but the wellness stuff is supposed to help you to not stress out so much. So there's an irony in stressing out about not doing all your wellness stuff. So one thing we're seeing is a lot of more wellness-based businesses pop up where there's not so much the fitness, but the wellness. And this is speculation on my part, but one of the reasons I think they're being so successful is it's feels like a low barrier to entry. You're not going to ask me to sweat and hurt, right? I just have to go in and feel good. And I think there's a lot of value in that, and a lot of value for us professionals to be aware of all these things and how we can help people to make the right choices. So again, wellness is not just a trend. It's definitely here to stay. And then I don't know what the answer is to this, but AI is going to have some role in there. I just don't totally know what it is. And I can tell you from about a year ago where I was still Mr. Reluctant with AI, because I really didn't understand it or know what it was, to now I use it all day, every day in my profession, and how much better it's gotten in just this past year. I think it's inevitable that it's going to be a part of health and wellness, but how exactly, I'm not sure. I can tell you one thing that I've done. The best nutrition tracker I've ever used is the one that I built in ChatGPT, and I track everything there. And the great thing about it, if you think about analysis, is if I had a year's worth of eating in there, the level of analysis I can do in seconds is so much better than me trying to sift through spreadsheets of a year's worth of information. So the level of analysis and therefore insights I can get is near instant, which if we're really looking at it from a behavior change point of view, if I can analyze someone's behaviors that quickly, it allows me as a coach to be able to give them some insights that would have been harder to come by in the days before AI.
Yeah, that's a great point. Forge has got an interesting relationship with AI. I had to get ahead of the AI train just because of my space. And there's a lot of competition with AI. And that's just the reality of it. It's just another competitor that entered the market, really. But the way that Forge uses AI exclusively is for the onboarding process automations for when somebody enrolls, and for our social media help. We do use AI to help us with that because it takes that burden off of me. But in our client interactions, in workout programming, all of our nutrition, we don't use AI at all. Everything is written by hand for that client. We do mobility training, flexibility training, stabilization. We work with power athletes. We work with hypertrophy, figure competitors, and then, of course, skills. So we do athletic development, sports performance, all online. It can all be done online. And I would say that most of my clients tend to be executives. I have a lot of lawyers, a lot of doctors, CEOs, executive level kinds of folks. That's just tends to be my client base for some reason. I haven't actually figured it out with an almost equal male to female ratio. It's really fascinating, maybe a little more female than male on my end. And I enjoy writing their programming. And, yeah, it takes me 30 minutes to write some of them, like the more complicated ones, but some of them, like a mobility algorithm for somebody who's just, they tweaked their knee, hiking that weekend or whatever they fell over their dog down the stairs, which just happened to one of my clients the other day. I had to scrap her this week's program and we had to massage it to accommodate. And I feel like that is part of that personal interaction, but AI is not going away. I know that. Like I said, we have a pretty robust AI system. It's for business operations. But everything that we do is for the person. That's because I have problems with ChatGPT and other AI places that the math doesn't check out when I have them write a program, because I've been curious to see, because I have clients who'll be like, hey, I asked ChatGPT or I asked this AI protocol, what should my macros be? And I'm like, well, the first thing you need to stop doing is eating so much cake over the weekends or whatever it is. And like you were saying, people focus on the minutia. So they'll go to ChatGPT to get all this detail. I'm having trouble just getting you to do your workouts. What are you doing over there? That could be a detriment to people. Analysis paralysis. I think an overload of information can cause people to not make decisions and not move. So, but speaking of personal, I wanted to ask you a few things, right? Just kind of wrapping this up here, but I wanted people to get to know you a little bit more. And you're going to probably have students listen to this and other people get to hear. But speaking of social media, and we see stuff in the gym. What is a fitness myth that you most want to see just die?
So let me go through the Rolodex, because there's the basic ones, right? So I used to say this to clients and to students, like, people know what they know, but they don't know why they know it. So what I mean by that is, this is very true in the gym. People for a long time just knew that you're supposed to end your workouts with a bunch of crunches and abs, right? Like all the 24-hour fitness gyms I used to work in back then, there was always rows of those ab benches, right? What an expensive way to do a crunch, by the way, right? And so people just knew that. So it was just like, everyone just knows that's how you end a workout and that's how you're supposed to do it. But there's no truth to it. So that's not necessarily a myth by itself, but a lot of times in the fitness world and nutrition world, people just know something and they know it, but they don't know why they know it. It's just one of those things that just kind of seeped into a bunch of people's memories, and it has just kind of stuck. I think I don't know if this is a myth or a misunderstanding, but I think it's still the case that way too many folks think that they are supposed to, there's this big time where they're going to get started with taking care of themselves. And then that's going to kickstart everything. And ultimately that never really happens that way, right? There has to be a time where you decide, I'm not this person anymore. Now I'm this kind of person. And, if we're going to call it a myth, I think the myth in it is that you can just wait until the perfect time hits and then you can get started and get all the results that you're looking for. And for the most part, that's not true. Now, if we move to some of the fun ones, like a lot of the stuff that we see on social media, some of the fitness myths that I see online are, one that's still, I don't know how this is still a thing, but muscle confusion. Like I still see it out there. What a great piece of marketing, by the way. What a great piece of marketing. It was popularized by one of the workout videos back in the day, but your muscles don't get confused, right? Yeah. I understand that adding some variety into your training can give you a different result. Whether or not it gives you the result you're looking for, I'm skeptical. I've known a lot of people get in fantastic shape and they do like 4 exercises. There's literally no variety, but they're masterful at those 4 exercises. So the notion that you have to be hitting every single angle and doing all these crazy exercises and just making up stuff, I think is a big part of what causes people to feel overwhelmed with exercise in the first place. The reality is, for a lot of people, you could just have like 3, 4, 5 things that you do on a consistent basis. Again, back to what I was saying earlier, simple and consistent. If you become masterful at those things and do them consistently, you're probably going to get some good results. So we can keep going, but I'll just stick with that as my main answer, is that you don't need to try to confuse your muscles. Your muscles are not going to get confused. And again, keeping things simple and consistent is probably your best bet.
I did like how you said that thinking that someday is when you're going to start. It's always Monday. Have you noticed that? I'm just going to start this on Monday. We provide free fitness consultations where people can call in and meet with a coach live, like on a Zoom call, and ask about the programming, get to know the coach, see if there's somebody they want to work with. And it's overwhelming how many of my coaches say, just talk to this person. But they said they're going to start Monday. And I've always felt that that's been a frustration, because why not start today? Well, if you're not ready today, then you're not going to be ready Monday, straight up. Sometimes there's conditions to that, like somebody's going to be, like a July 4th weekend. Okay, I understand you're going to start on Monday if you just had your call on a Wednesday, and you're going to probably not be able to participate until Monday. Got it. But that's not what I'm talking about. I think that is a really good one too. Speaking of, since you're talking about people who just like do 4 exercises and they get in incredible shape, what are your top 4 exercises that you like, that you personally like that you always work in somehow, some way?
My top 4 exercises?
Yeah.
Okay. So one, I'm just going to count this because in the last 10 years, it's become a staple for me. This is super boring, but I'm a big walker these days. And
Yeah.
I don't think I thought of it as a great use of my time when I was younger, but now I like being able to kind of accomplish more than one thing at once. And when I go for my walks, I always have a morning walk, like pretty soon after I wake up. And I now know that I'm like getting a little movement, a little blood flow, a little fresh air, a little sunlight. I'm usually listening to something. So I might be getting some entertainment or some education, but I'm just kind of getting myself going. And also now that I have more or less a desk job, I work from home, I'm at my desk. The amount of activity I get in on a daily basis can be super low if I'm not mindful enough to get out there and start walking. So I enjoy it. I don't think of it as a form of high level exercise, but it is a good way to kind of take care of your body. And remember earlier, I said that I had clients that spent less than 30 minutes a day on their feet. This is a good way to just make sure that you still got it, right? Like there's times I do this like on my birthdays, do a couple of, see how many pull-ups you can do, push-ups you can do, how much you can squat, how fast you can run a mile or something like that. Because if you haven't done one of those things in like 10 years, I bet you can't do it anymore. So being consistent with something like walking ensures that when you, go on that family vacation or whatever, you can actually do it. I bet you've had clients where they were shocked. They took the family to Disney and then they were shocked how tired they were. And it's like, well, yeah, you're not used to being on your feet for 8 hours a day. You're used to being on your feet for 30 minutes a day. So walking, definitely one of them. I started off with training on the strength and conditioning and kind of meathead side of training. So there's still some meathead style things that I love. I still love a good dumbbell lateral raise. It's still one of my favorite exercises. It doesn't accomplish a ton for me anymore other than, trying to have good looking shoulders, but it's still one of my favorite exercises. Anything kind of loaded movement. So sled push and sled pull or farmer walk or suitcase carry, something like that, I feel accomplishes a lot because you can more or less look at them as full body. You're definitely going to be getting some quote unquote cardiovascular or cardio and cardiovascular conditioning. It lends itself to full body sturdiness, which is a non-technical word, but I think you all know what I mean. Like, is your body resilient or is it not? There's frail and then there's sturdy. And I'd rather have a body that's sturdy and functional. So I love sled pushes, sled pulls, and then carries. And then, I'm not going to call myself a kettlebell guy, but I love exercises that do a lot for me. And the basic kettlebell swing or variations of the swing, I feel like do a lot for me because I love the thought of being able to do bursts of activity that challenge the cardiovascular system and strength and, test your coordination a little bit. I think are good for if the nervous system, the mechanics of your body, your cardiovascular system, etc. If I would never had to do all the different exercises out there, but I can still walk. I can still do my loaded movements and carries, and some kettlebell stuff. And I guess I'll throw in some dumbbell lateral raises in there too. I think I'd still be in decent shape moving forward.
The sled pushes, both the pull and the push, those are really a lot of fun. Those are good ones. I like that. Being an educated man, what's a book, podcast, or whatever resource that you would recommend to anyone who's looking to improve their health or at least their mindset around health?
There's one that I liked, and I'm probably biased because I got to know the guys a little bit when I lived in San Jose. But I do think the guys at Mind Pump, so the Mind Pump podcast, and they have a bunch of products. I think they do a good job because they kind of shed a lot of light on the health and fitness industry and the profession, but then they also give a lot of relevant information for, health and fitness enthusiasts or people who are trying to learn a new thing or two about getting in shape. I think they do a great job of kind of covering all that, and they release a lot of content. So there's a lot of stuff available. Now for the professionals, one piece of advice I would give if you're seeking out podcasts or books or courses or whatever is to not keep taking the same stuff that you've already taken. So what I mean by that is if this is your 20th kettlebell course, you don't need that anymore. If you like it, great. If you got money to burn to take courses, great. But look at your weaknesses as a professional and be honest with yourself. And if it's business, sales, marketing, then that's where the focus needs to be, right? So you can learn a lot from different podcasts. There's endless books on business. Some of the different fitness education companies do a great job with their business and marketing and sales courses. But I would definitely, for any professional out there, be honest with yourself about where you're not so strong as a fitness professional, and then put some of your focus there.
Yeah. That's all good stuff. Mind Pump's a great resource. I've worked with both Sal DiStefano and Adam Schaefer. Adam was a fitness manager for me and was actually, I could easily say, my favorite, because I ran 19 or 20 24-hour fitnesses in my 5 years there. And Adam Schaefer was top notch, man. He really led a great personal training team. And Sal was my boss for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And we became good friends. And he would be somebody I would say was my original fitness mentor. Bobby Harrison would be my actual primary mentor, the guy who actually got me in the fitness industry back in 2000. But yeah, Sal's a fantastic guy. Really, he is very, very funny too behind the scenes. Like, I know he's funny on the podcast and stuff, but he's even better in real life. He's one hell of a good man. I really like those guys a lot. They're cool. Unfortunately, I don't know Justin at all. I've never actually even met him. But I remember when Sal was starting Mind Pump, he sent me an email to look over this thing he was building called Maps. And back then he was saying, dude, I'm calling it Maps because, like your veins are like maps and then it takes you somewhere where you want to go. He likes vascularity, but yeah, great guys.
I used to manage a gym and I didn't know at first that they were members there. And then I would see some of their content pop up and I'd be like, hey, that's here. That's here at this gym where they filmed this. So, I started seeing some of them around and I lived near their studio. So I went to a couple of events there, but, yeah, really great sources and my experiences with them, good dudes who really want to help.
Their heart is definitely in the right place. Sal used to call me champion, and it's kind of stuck. Like I call other people that sometimes, it's kind of funny. Anyway, I unfortunately haven't talked to them in a long, long time, but great guys. Speaking of, just kind of a habit, like what's a habit, a daily habit other than the walking that keeps you sharp?
So over the years, I've usually had, I guess busy schedule. If you're a busy trainer, you've got a busy schedule. And then, I've had times where my week to week is meeting heavy, task heavy, and you got to schedule all these things, right? One thing that I learned was that we're so busy doing that we often don't take time to just think. And you'd be shocked how just taking 10 to 15 minutes to just think, and it could be specific or it could just be whatever. I like to include in there thinking about the week ahead, looking at my schedule just so that I got all my ducks in a row. One, but then also not having your thoughts biased by anything else. I'm guilty of I'm always consuming something. I'm always looking at something, listening to something, whatever the case may be. But I got in the habit of picking times where I'm just going to not do that. Sometimes I'll incorporate that with a walk. I'll intentionally walk, but not listen to something just so you have time to think. And it's shocking, really, still, even to this day, how much clarity and how much creativity I get sometimes out of just a 15 minutes that I set aside, just to think. And as simple as that sounds, when you start doing it, you might have the same realization I had, is that I hardly ever just think. You just find that all that you do is you do things, but you don't actually take time to just kind of assess and think. So that for me is absolutely something that helps to keep me, you use the word sharp. It helps to keep me sharp because I'm actually just actively thinking about what I'm doing, whether it's life or work or both. And like I said, it allows me to have some clarity and in some cases creativity that might not have happened otherwise.
I'm really glad that you brought that one up. It's so important to remember that our brains are organs too, and they need to be maintained. In an episode that we did recently, I talked about shame and how to harness shame into power to change. And in that, I gave a piece of advice that I've been using for years, which is every Sunday, I take 10, 15, 20 minutes and I will get my core mat out and I'll lay it down on the floor over here where I have tons of space. And I will reflect on my last week, on how I did as a human being on all facets. How did I do in my relationships? How did I do in my job, or at least in my business and my company? And am I doing right by my coaches? Am I doing right by my clients? Am I doing right by my family? I think about these things, and I'll even reflect on instances where I'm really happy with the way that I handled something. But conversely, I'll also, without the lens of condemnation, identify areas that I can improve and say, I could have handled that better. And in the future, I'm going to be aware of it. I'm going to now actively, cognitively be aware of this proclivity that I have to respond X when Y happens. And that has been really powerful for me. The other thing that I do is I just go out and work on the land. We have a fair amount of property and there's so much to do out there. Unfortunately, we have venomous animals that live here. So we have copperheads, rattlesnakes, water moccasins, scorpions, brown recluse, and black widow. And so you're not out there listening to music. You need to hear what's going on around you. And sometimes I'll be out in a project that's out in where there's a little bit more overbrush and I'm aware, but I'm thinking, because what I'm doing is easy. I'm just hauling stuff around and it gives me a chance to really connect. But one big one that I like to share with everybody is just go to Yosemite National Park into the valley. And that's a humbling experience. Any place that you can go to get outside and get away from your technology and just think, it's powerful. So anyway, we're going to wrap it up here. So, what's your favorite workout song?
I don't have one, but it's crazy. I just got asked this recently, but I'm from like the 80s and 90s, and for workout music, you remember back in the day when we'd have like a cassette player on our hip? We would wear those things where you just have a cassette player.
Yeah, Walkmans. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe like one DVD. Well, like I think I preferred to feel angry at the weights when I was lifting them. So it would be kind of like a angry type music. So, like Rage Against the Machine is probably the band that I've played the most as I'm working out. So I'll name them as the top band I've ever listened to while working out, but it's probably kind of that sort of music that has a little bit of anger behind it that kind of pumps me up for the workouts.
Well, before we go into all of your details and how people can learn more about Lionel University, how people can learn more about you and your socials and all that stuff, something that, since we're just talking about thinking and whatnot, if you could go back in time, these are always fun.
Mm-hmm.
And you got a hold of you in your teenage years where you think that you were probably at your most vulnerable. And you could go back and you could talk to yourself then. Was there anything that you would want to change or anything a piece of advice that you would give yourself about your career?
Yeah. One would be like finding mentorship earlier, because I was probably 7 or 8 years in before I really found some of that. So I was doing a lot of stuff myself in the beginning, and I had some success, but there was things that I would have figured out much sooner if I'd have had a mentor. But the real thing that was probably holding me back from finding someone to mentor me was probably being assertive about it. So it's easy to be assertive about things that you like. It's harder to be assertive about the things that put a little bit of the fear of scrutiny and judgment inside of you, right? That's the stuff that makes a lot of people stop from doing anything, right? Like I didn't become a gym manager as fast as they would have let me because I was way too afraid to get in front of people and have to talk to them or have them look at me for anything, right? So the fear of scrutiny and judgment, what I found is that, unfortunately, if you just go toward it and just do the thing and know that you might just flop a time or two. If you approach it knowing that you're going to flop, but also knowing that it'll teach you how to not flop going forward, then that's, for me, would have been a very powerful tool to have, because there was probably a lot of things that I acted like I didn't think were important to me, or I didn't do, or I didn't try. But the reality was I was probably a little afraid to try, to do all kinds of things. And once I kind of learned the lesson for myself that whenever I feel that feeling, then that probably means I probably need to do that thing. If I feel that little fear, probably means it's going to be a good thing for me. Once I learned that, now I know to recognize that feeling and know that, I'm probably doing the right thing. So find a mentor earlier. But I think the biggest one for me, and then probably for anyone else, is if there's a part of this profession that feels uncomfortable, like I'm not a salesperson. Every trainer says that. I'm not a salesperson, but it's inherent in the job. So you are a salesperson. So as soon as you get over that and say, okay, I'm going to learn how to sell. I know it's uncomfortable to role play, but role playing is one of the best ways to do it. I'm going to do that too. If you do those things that make you feel uncomfortable and you get comfortable with the uncomfortable, then guess what? You've gotten better, and you're also doing the thing that you're going to be asking your clients to do. You're going to be asking them to get comfortable doing things that make them uncomfortable. So you're actually asking yourself to kind of go through the same emotional process that you're asking your clients to do. It's okay to be afraid, but over time, your reaction to that fear is what's going to change.
Absolutely.
Like I've spoken at the biggest conferences now, right? I'm still super nervous every time, but my reaction to that nervousness is different. Back in the day, I might have wanted to run away and hide and, tell them I was sick or something. Now I still feel those things, but my reaction to it is different. So I think that's what you really get out of it when you test yourself with what's uncomfortable, is it doesn't make the uncomfortable things more comfortable, but your reaction to it is different.
I've absolutely enjoyed chatting with you, catching up. So tell people, how do they find you? Give us the download.
Yeah, well, the place where I interact the most is just Instagram. I know there's a bunch of them, but I just have the one that I interact the most, and that's John_Bauer. That was the way I was able to get John Bauer, is I had to put 2 underscores. So John_Bauer. And then if you looked up John Bauer Fitness, all things would come up, like LinkedIn and that sort of thing, if you were that interested. Lionel University, you can find us at Lionel, LIONEL.edu. And then for all of you, if we got people listening who are looking to get certified as a trainer, maybe looking to explore a brand new certification, like we talked about earlier, Lionel University is the only university that only services health and fitness degrees, and now we're moving into credentials and certifications like a CPT that you've gotten from other places or thinking about getting from other places. This one is accredited by a university. I think that's a huge step up in terms of the world of certifications. You know, this university is filled with a bunch of professors who are PhDs, which is very different from the level of subject matter experts that are working at typical certifying agencies, which I'm a disciple of. I worked for one. I worked for ISSA for years. I made a bunch of their courses, and I highly respect what we did and what they're doing at ISSA, and I love what we're doing at Lionel. But we're accredited by university, and our credentials and certifications can be used and parlayed into credits toward a degree if you were inclined to move that way. So some really exciting things. Our CPT doesn't expire, which I think is a huge selling point, because most of the other ones after 2 years, you do have to re-up in some way. So it doesn't expire. And we're really excited about it. We're just now launching it, for the listeners. And I'm sure we can put this in the show notes too. But if you go to global.lionel.edu, you can find the course there. You'll see the Lionel University, certified personal trainer course. And if you use the code FORGE, so hopefully that's easy to remember. If you use the code FORGE, you're going to get $700 off that certification. So typically $999, we're going to give you $700 off the certification. And I'd love for some feedback. So if you wanted to take the certification, find me on Instagram and tell me it's great, tell me it sucks, whatever. I'm open to all feedback, but just know that I'm here to help. I've been in this industry for a long time, and incredibly, I've paid my bills for the last 25 years from fitness, and I've been able to do a lot of the normal things that you want, right? I've owned a couple of homes. I've got I've gone on vacation, all the stuff that you might want as an adult. I wasn't so excited about those things when I was 20, but as a nearly 50-year-old, I'm happy to have some of those things going on for me. And all those things can be accomplished. You can live a great professional adult life if you do choose to upgrade yourself and educate yourself in a way that positions you to have that sort of success in the industry.
Spot on. All right, we're going to go and put the links. It'll definitely be in the YouTube and then at forgept.com on our podcast page. All of the links for John will be there, including his Instagram handles. And then we'll get all those links, remind you guys of the code. And we're probably going to even send an email out on this because that's such a generous offer from Lionel University and from John Bauer himself. Thank you so much, my friend, for joining me today and taking time, because I know that's precious to you. You and I share that. We're very, very jealous of where our time goes and spending it with you. And I get to see Rex next week. I've already spent some time with Chrissy. I'm probably going to have Dr. B on in a few weeks. I'm mopping up the old Brian crew. So, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been great to reconnect with everybody. So thank you, my man. Cheers. And thank you, everybody. Go out there and remake yourselves today.
Thank you.